beauty is really beginning to take shape. Well, that went in a lot easier than any of us expected. The door is hung by 4 bolts. Lovely! Fixing the number plate is probably the simplest job on this car. Looks good enough to kiss. Hello my car restoring chums, welcome to A Car Is Reborn. Now my Series 1 4.2 litre E-Type Roadster is very nearly finished. 2/3 of the car, apart from the upholstery, is almost done, but there's a big bit missing. It should be here where I'm sitting, it's the bonnet, and that's what I'm going to be doing today. But before I crack on, a word from my twin brother. Now this is something I really wanted to show you. The bonnet's all been sprayed up, but the underside, the wheel arches here, hasn't been touched. Now that's because it needs to have basically an underseal. Now when I was a teenager, I spent many an unhappy weekend painting that kind of bitumen style underseal on the undersides of my Minis and other cars I had, and it looked great to start with. But leave it a couple of years, even less than that sometimes, it would crack up because it was so hard, and you'd have water getting under it and all your panels would rust away. Well now you can use this stone chip stuff that is hard, but it's also quite rubbery, so it's very flexible, and you can get it in cans like this that you spray with the proper gear they've got here in the workshop, but you can also get it in handheld cans so you can do it at home. And it's a top surface because not only does it get into everywhere, it is flexible, but also you can paint over it with either a cellulose paint or a 2-pack paint. So like on the Jag, on the underside of the boot floor, that looks all rippled. It's not a bad paint effect. It's actually because it's had stone chip put on it and then it's had the finished colour put over the top. So we better crack on because there's quite a lot to do. Lovely job. I wish I'd done that when I was 17. I'll tell you what, he's a top bloke, my brother, a bit inexperienced, but he's coming on a treat. Now, this has moved on a little bit since it was stone chipped. Put on the hinges here, put on this front grille, but round the front is where most of the work's got to take place because I've got to put in the headlights. It's a very interesting job. As you can see, we've already finished this side, and doesn't it look gorgeous? Oh, yes, indeed. Now all I've got to do is t'other side. I've already done some of the basic prep here, which is putting in the bowl for the headlight and the headlight itself. That's all in position. Very basic stuff. You don't need to see that really. Also, the lenses and lights here for the indicators and the side lights, just popping on the cover now. And it's amazing how when you put these bits on, they really start to give the bonnet its proper look. The later series, Series 2, 3 and so on, had a very different headlight setup, and I don't think it looked anything like as good as these original lenses. They may not have been that practical, but they certainly looked fantastic, and that's one of the reasons I went for a Series 1. Next job is to put on the front bumper. All the bumpers have been re-chromed, and they look fantastic, and fitting them is very straightforward. It sort of hooks round the mouth there, and the reason you put on the bumper before you put on the lens is so that you get access through the hole here to be able to feed in the bolt. Next job is to do some corrosion protection, something that E-Types never had when they were first made, which is incredible. Even like between the sills, the inner and the outer sill, which is a real trap for water. They were bare metal when they came out of the factory, because obviously it was only the outside that was painted. These days though, we have all these kind of technical stuff we can use to stop corrosion, and this beautiful gloopy stuff is called cavity wax, and being liquid like this, it can be sprayed into any box section or under any trim, anywhere any water will settle, and it sets into a kind of a waxy state, but it doesn't dry hard and crack and then allow water underneath it, which is absolutely brilliant. You get all kinds of different probes you can use. This is the probe that will go inside the sills, or the cavity between the sills, and at the end here, if you have a look on this brass fitting, there are lots of holes all the way around the fitting, which means that you feed the probe right through down to the sills, you start spraying, and as you start spraying, you start pulling the probe backwards, and it just sprays it in a fan all the way as you're pulling it out, so you make sure that every little bit is covered. And the probe I'm using is this little device, which you can get into lots of nooks and crannies. That just fits onto the end with a push fitting. Sorted. Connect up the airline, and then let's get spraying. Now, while I crack on with this cavity wax, you take a look at John Phillips' Triumph Stag Mark II V8. It's a lovely car. See you a bit later.
We ran the car for 2 years without doing any work to it. By that time it had got 106,000 miles, and we were burning a little bit of oil. A bit worried about it, but with the use of a workshop manual and common sense, we pulled the engine out at home and stripped it. Did a rebore, pistons, crank grind, had that tough dried, everything was balanced, and we ran that then for another 12 months before we had to start work on the body. This is when I found problems. Somebody had put rear wing repair panels on, but instead of fitting them properly, they'd actually slapped it on top of the old wing, hot riveted it in place, they hadn't even cut it to shape, and then filled it for the filler. The biggest modification that I can say I've done to this is the gearbox. We've put a Jaguar ZF 4-speed gearbox with lockup, so really it's giving it a 5-speed auto box. The Stag Owners Club, we've got approximately 5,000 members. Each area has its own shows that they do. They do fun runs, treasure hunts, international events. The club has a technical side to it, so if you get problems, it's only a phone call away. Lots of help is available, but the best thing is to talk to members and look at their cars and ask for advice. You need somebody who knows the car before you actually start on it yourself. It's no good going straight in. Talk to somebody who knows the car, who knows where to look, and can give you the right advice about doing it. We had 10 days in Switzerland.